Afternoon and good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to episode 19 of the Groovy podcast. Uh, Today is the 17th of September, and you're listening to me, Peter Ledbrook, podcasting from London, and I have a special guest with me, Dan Woods. Welcome, Dan. You can say hi.
Thank you so much, Peter.
Are you
Hello.
okay? Hello. So yeah, thank you, Dan. He's a hero, really. He's actually in a vehicle on the way to Michigan. So thanks for joining us. If he does cut out, I'll just have to fill in while he's going through tunnels, which probably aren't that common on your path. Hey.
No, I don't think we'll pass through any tunnels. We should be okay.
Yeah, well, in the UK, we have a few tunnels, especially on the train. So that's the excuse people give when they sort of switch off the mobile phone. It's, going through a tunnel. Sorry, goodbye. So Dan's just finished with Spring 1 2GX. The conference is almost done, I think. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's over today.
Yeah, it's probably a talk or two maybe left, and then it's over. So really, I want to know what's been happening there, because I wasn't there, and I think a few listeners might not have been there. So it'd be interesting to know what was talked about, what was the big news, what was specifically happening that's interesting in the Groovy and Grails communities. I heard you had an interesting chat with Graham about the future of Grails, so I'm hoping that you can dish some, if not dirt, but at least some idea of future developments. And of course, Ratpack had its version 1 release just a few days ago. So all the Ratpack team have been celebrating, and Dan has a book in the works. We keep joking about it on this podcast, but it has apparently gone into a early access program. That's right, with 4 chapters already ready for you to read.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think probably the biggest news that I would say for the Groovy and Grails community out of Spring 1 was definitely some of the new stuff that they're doing with Grails 3. Grails 3.1, I think, is out as of this week. Sorry if I'm getting the versions wrong.
It's milestone 1. 3.1 milestone 1. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Yeah. So this was pretty exciting because Graham got up on stage during the second night keynote and did a live presentation of a very quick process of building an application. He demoed the actuator UI, which was pretty compelling. It's very interesting stuff, and the fact that it's all driven through Gradle is huge. You know, it kind of makes everything that they're doing with Grails 3, less specialized like it was with Grails 2. And more of a sort of ecosystem general type thing. So it was very exciting to see that. Like you said, I had the opportunity to talk with Graham for a couple of hours on Monday night, the first night of Spring 1, and we were just talking about future of Grails, what kind of stuff they're looking to get into, the sustainability model behind it. I don't want to give away too many secrets. I think it's probably better to wait and see. What I will say is Grails is very, very much in a good spot, and they're working extremely hard to make sure that the problems that they're solving are ones that actually matter for building web applications, for doing the kind of stuff that we absolutely need to do. And so specifically, I think one thing that I am okay to say is specifically they're starting to work towards better cloud integration. So the ideas that kind of support the Spring Cloud OSS stuff that's going on in the Spring Boot ecosystem, making some of those concepts a little bit more first class from the framework's perspective. And if I understood correctly, I think that all of this will be able to be accomplished with web profiles. Application profiles that Grails 3 now has. So it should be pretty exciting to see, and it should be something that will be hopefully a big game changer in the space of cloud and microservices and all of that kind of stuff. So it's very exciting.
Okay, so what is the Spring Cloud OSS thing about? Because that definitely got a lot of airtime from what it seemed from tweets.
Definitely. Spring Cloud OSS is pretty freaking cool, to be honest with you. It basically is a wrapper around a lot of the Netflix open source tech. So all of this stuff that Netflix is doing, they open source. It's really great. And what Spring Boot has done is it's made it not only digestible in the context of building a Spring Boot application, but also extremely easy to use and to get started with everything. A lot of it is driven by the auto configuration technology that Spring Boot has. So for example, getting a Eureka instance, which is Netflix Discovery Service, getting integration with that is really not much more code than just saying @enable discovery client, which is really cool. So it's basically the Spring approach to getting the platform, the underlying platform, which is what they're building with Cloud Foundry, right? Getting the applications integrated into that ecosystem. So it's really neat.
Okay, does that mean that are we getting something like Chaos Monkey for with Spring Cloud OSS, or is it other services? Hey, I just love the name. I love the idea of Chaos Monkey.
Yeah, no, it's not specifically that, if I understand correctly, but it is the other parts of that stuff. So we when we talk about building microservices and running in the cloud, we talk about bringing in configuration from the environment, making sure that your services are discoverable, making sure that they're fault tolerant, all that kind of stuff. So it's bringing in things like Hystrix and Eureka and Archaeus, which is the fast properties stuff, and really pretty much everything Netflix OSS that they can get their hands on and make easy to use, they're doing it, and it's absolutely heroic efforts. And I'm privileged to say that I got to be a part of that in some small way, and I think it's absolutely amazing that the amount of work that they've been able to do in the last year. It's phenomenal.
Okay, cool. So this is like a joint effort, joint venture between Netflix and Pivotal, or the Spring team.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say it's been led heavily by the Pivotal team. Dave Seyer's specifically been a big part of it. Spencer Gibb has been a big part of it. Dave Seyer, of course, is a brilliant engineer, and he's been able to take a lot of that Netflix technology, which has been very specific for their use case, and generalize it in a way that can span a multitude of use cases. So the Spring Cloud OSS stuff is definitely the best approach to getting into that world.
Okay, cool. And then we can see that coming into Grails. So it's definitely one of the big benefits with Grails 3 being built on top of Spring Boot is easier integration with all the new cool Spring stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, speaking of Grails 3, I was actually interested. I did my blog post on migrating the Call for Papers app, and then I did it. I was in a class, and they were interested in Grails 3 and what was the difference between Grails 2, and so I just in the class migrated the Grails 2 app to Grails 3, and for a lot of stuff, it's surprisingly straightforward. So I keep telling them, there's a lot of there's fiddly stuff. You have to move things around, but nothing that's really tough. It's not mentally challenging stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is good. And of course, my main issue when I did my other migration was the flipping Spring Security plugin wasn't available for Grails 3 at that point. So not that I'm bitter or anything. Was Bert there speaking about Spring Security at all?
No, I didn't. Well, I don't think so. I didn't see him if he was there, and that would be odd if I didn't see Bert. Uh, so
Yeah.
I don't think he was there. But I do think if I recall from the community Slack correctly that Spring Security has been updated for Grails 3, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Basically, a week after I'd done the upgrade, it came. The milestone release came out. So you know how
Figures.
these things go.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it was like, hey, great, thanks for the work. Shame it didn't come a little bit earlier, but that
Yeah.
was, to my mind, that was highlighted what Grails can bring to the table versus Spring Boot. That although Spring Boot has its conventions and default settings and stuff, it doesn't go that far if you look at things like security, and I suspect outside of the core as well. They're probably still happy to work with the Java Mail API, which I detest with a passion.
Yeah, so that's a really great point that you bring up there, Peter. I think that it's really not articulated enough uh, in this kind of world. I've talked to a lot of people at these conferences and people talking about moving from Grails to Spring Boot, and basically asking the question like, now that Spring Boot is here, why do I need Grails? And it's not articulated enough that what Grails is doing is putting this entire layer of convention and structure on top of Spring Boot, which is really otherwise you're kind of, there are patterns for doing things and there are ways to accomplish it, but in general you're kind of on your own, right? In a lot of ways it takes a somewhat unopinionated approach, and what Grails 3 gives you is all of the ecosystem of Spring Boot and all of its auto configuration and all of its power and all of its rapid productivity, et cetera, et cetera. Uh, but then it also decorates this structure on top of it that makes building applications much easier in that kind of world. So I think that for anybody who's kind of looking to get into the Spring Boot ecosystem and they want to leverage all that kind of stuff, and they maybe have the wrong idea about what Grails is these days, check it out. I mean, that's the best that I can say, because Grails 3 is super compelling. It's a really great accomplishment that they've been able to evolve it to the point that it is today.
Yeah, it feels like Grails 3 is a complete refresh, and I am so happy it uses Gradle now. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of relief amongst the Grails team, because I think none of us really liked or wanted to maintain a build system. It
Yeah.
was just I remind people that we looked at Gradle back when Grails 1.1 was coming out, and we were like, can we move to Gradle to do the build system?
Yeah, exactly. And
Um,
leave those problems for the people who are really good at solving those problems, like Luke Daly, right? He wants to solve build problems. Let him do it.
yeah, exactly. I mean, those guys know exactly what they're doing. So,
Yep. Yep.
yeah, it's great stuff. Okay, so right, that's Grails 3, Spring Cloud OSS. Was there anything else that caught your eye?
Uh, you know, I I think it's probably worth saying a few words on Cloud Foundry. But I do it cautiously because I don't want to seem like I don't want it to appear as though I'm evangelizing any of their stuff. God knows they have enough evangelists. But I will just say a few words on Cloud Foundry. If if you're like me, uh, you checked out Cloud Foundry maybe a couple of years ago and then saw the state that it was in, thought this might not be for me, and then you kind of walked away from it. uh, Today, what I can say is that Cloud Foundry has made really, really vast improvements in their infrastructure and in the product offering that they have. It's really compelling. They have auto scaling. They have fault tolerant infrastructure. They have infrastructure as code. They have a full continuous delivery system. The whole pipeline is there. It's really neat to see it today versus where it was a couple of years ago. It's really come a long way, and they're going out of their way to support of course, the Spring Cloud integration, Spring Boot integration. They have really great support for working with Grails, for example. So I think, if you're getting back into it and you're thinking about building your own platform as a service, it might just be worth checking out Cloud Foundry and seeing how it fits. That's all I'll say on it. I'm not evangelizing it. All I want to say is that I looked at it. It looks cool.
Yes, yeah. There's some irony. You're talking to an ex-Cloud Foundry evangelist.
I know. I know.
And I knew it was changing a lot. They basically rebuilt the whole thing.
Yeah, and you know what? On another note, the Cloud Foundry guys have the Lattice project, lattice.cf. Lattice is super compelling technology because basically what it's doing is it's making Docker productionized, and they're kind of operationalizing containers in a different way. I've played around a little bit with Lattice. Lattice is how can I say this? So they're not selling Lattice, so I don't think that I run the risk of sounding like I'm working for Pivotal, which I definitely do not. But Lattice is probably the future of computing technology. I'll say that.
Okay, so this is mainly like a deployment technology?
No. It's so much more.
Oh.
It's like a mini platform as a service. It runs Docker containers, but it also provides a scheduler for being able to be fault tolerant, knowing when resources need to move between physical hosts. It just provides a lot of stuff. Self-healing capabilities, the whole works. Basically everything that you would need to build a microservice-like infrastructure.
But isn't that, sorry to interrupt, isn't that what Cloud Foundry is already providing?
You got it. Exactly.
Irrespective of, so it's just like, but we also support Docker.
Yeah, it's kind of like that, but it's much more contained, and it kind of operates on the idea that you're gonna, that you're gonna run a job and it's gonna supervise that job and make sure that job is gonna work. Now, it's very much like the kind of work being done with Mesos and Marathon. It's just a little bit different in that it kind of understands that that jobs, air quotes jobs, are actually applications that are running, right? And they're probably going to be long-lived. So that's kind of a neat thing to see.
Okay.
And it's open source. It's free. That's the best part.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. Do you think Docker is going to survive? There seems to be a bit of hate towards Docker. I don't know how much of that is valid, whether sysadmins are striking back because they don't like the feature set, or...
Yeah, Docker is definitely gonna win out. For all intents and purposes, it can be thought of as the default spec for containers. Nowadays, the race is going to be for some company to provide a solution that productionizes and operationalizes Docker containers, right? So it's not a matter of, is Docker going to be the technology of choice? That's done. It already is. Now we're at the point where, okay, Docker is the technology of choice, but how the hell do I use this in production? And there are a lot of companies out there that are trying to solve this problem. Cloud Foundry is one of them. Lattice, of course, is trying to do that with their stuff. There's another one, Morpheus, which I think is pretty compelling. GoMorpheus.com. It's a pretty compelling platform as a service. Many people in the community know one of the core developers on that project, David Estes. He's shared a lot of what Morpheus is doing and the problem space that they're trying to solve, and they're dead on. So I think the question will not be, is it going to be Docker? The question will be, now who is going to be the provider that I use that makes Docker a consumable thing for me, right?
Okay, got you. And for reference, this is David of Asset Pipeline fame.
You got it. Yep.
Yeah, cool. Okay, because I don't think I'd ever asked him what he was working on. So the cloud kind of brings me to another question that I have at the moment, which is, I mean, there's kind of a competition in some ways between native platforms. You've got you've got the Node.js stuff, but you've also now got Go, which is becoming more popular. There are other native language-based systems, and you've got the JVM on the other side. And Cloud feels like it's making resource and resource utilization a lot more important. It's no longer a case of just having big servers and throwing an app server on there or
Right.
clustering across servers. You're being charged often by how much memory you're using. So do you feel that that is a disadvantage of the JVM-based systems? Do you think it's going to be a hindrance for those systems that are more memory intensive than others, especially like Go apparently really doesn't take much memory if you've got a slimline map?
Sure. Yeah. Yes and no. I think with the improvements that continue to come to the JVM in Java 8 and Java 9, so definitely in the future, this idea that the JVM is a very heavyweight thing will eventually that won't be true, right? Because it will be able to be lightweight. I think that's what Jigsaw is going to be all about in Java 9. Even today, Ratpack applications, for example, can run on a very low memory footprint, and have all of have even better performance than you could possibly get out of native technologies that are out there. Short of building your own thing in C that uses non-blocking networking and reinventing all the wheels that are there. Sure, compelling thing, I think, for the
Okay, I'm afraid you are at this point breaking up. So I don't know if you're running out of range of your mobile antenna. So we'll give you a little moment.
Oh, sorry.
Right. Yeah, just give it a minute and see whether it settles down. But anyway, this is a good time to pause. I think we're going to, since you've introduced Ratpack, I think we'll just talk about that a little bit, since it did come to its 1.0 release. So I can kind of tell that the Gradle project influences the way that Luke does things. So the it's like from the regular releases. You said that I read your blog post. So Dan did a blog post about the release of Ratpack 1.0. You are the nominated spokesman, are you, for the team? Okay, we're almost completely lost you now. Do you want to see if you can reconnect? And I'll talk about that. So, yeah, Ratpack 1.0 came out. It's got kind of regular releases, apparently every month. But the other sort of Gradle-like aspect to its publishing mechanism, if you like, the way that it's released and what it means to be 1.0 is really about API stability and backwards compatibility, and that's the way that Gradle releases are largely done. So if you are within a major version, such as Gradle 2, then there are stronger guarantees of backwards compatibility between versions. And it looks like that's the approach being taken for Ratpack 1. So you may see newer features coming in the 1.x line, but you won't see breaking changes until there's a switch to 2. Okay, so hopefully we can get Dan back to talk about that. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, you nailed it. You hit it right on the head. The big point of the 0.9.x line was that we would figure out, what are all of the APIs that we need, and then once we had it to a point that we were very comfortable with it, we knew of people using it in production, and we had a lot of really good use cases for it. We would stabilize those APIs, get the implementations the way that we wanted them, and then make sure that we don't break it anymore, right?
Yeah.
So in the 1.x version line, you exactly what you said. You're going to see just stop. You're going to see maybe new features added, maybe new APIs that crop up, but the existing ones that are there aren't going to break anymore. And I think we've had a heroic group of individuals who have adopted Ratpack in the 0.9 line, and they understand that the monthly breaking changes have been a little bit of a nightmare. So we won't see that anymore with 1.0. So in practice, what 1.0 means is that you can safely adopt it. We're not going to change things out from underneath you. And also at the same time, it's production ready, right? That's the important part to the whole thing.
Right. And now you, of course, learn what it's like to write a book to something that changes and breaks. Okay, while you're writing, at least it's going to stabilize on 1.0 for you. So you should be able to get that book out quicker now. Do you have a
Yeah.
target date in mind?
Yeah,
So we
I
can
do.
hold you to it and make fun of you when you miss it.
It's a great question. Right now, from the editor's perspective, which is O'Reilly, from the publisher's perspective, we're slated for a February release, right?
Yep.
I'm targeting much sooner than that. That's the best I can say.
Okay, cool. Well, best of luck with that. I mean, if you don't hit the deadline, you would not be the first writer to miss a deadline. In fact, you would probably be the first writer to hit a deadline if you meant, or get there early. So I look forward to that. Ken, my co-caster, who's unfortunately not with us today, but he said very good so far. And a must read if you're going to use Ratpack. I think I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what he said in his tweet. So, good job there. I definitely need to get a hold of it, but because I'm interested in what Ratpack does. I have a kind of idea of how it works, but I haven't really grasped the core kind of use case for it, how to integrate it with other systems. The nice thing about Grails, for example, is you just get everything out of the box for your database-driven web application. As you mentioned in your blog post, Ratpack is very unopinionated. It's also very focused. I do like that. I like the Unix philosophy of focusing on one thing and doing it really well.
Mm-hmm.
But it does mean that it's kind of, you can use it for anything, but what do you feel is its sweet spot, its kind of big selling points? Why should people be even thinking about it? What sort of projects should people be looking at it for?
Yeah, so exactly to your point there. This is what I can say. One of the things that Luke has been Luke Daly. He's of course the lead developer on Ratpack. He's the project lead. He's the mastermind behind it. One of the things that he's kind of set out to do is be unopinionated, but in the cases where you need to do something, make it as easy as possible. So kind of like what you're talking about with building data-driven application, which is actually funny. I have an entire chapter on this in the book. Building data-driven applications, it shouldn't be more than a one-liner, basically, to get your database connection up and running. And if you're using Groovy, the semantics for writing all of this out in your application become even easier than it needs to be. So the core use case, I would say, is anybody looking to run in the cloud, right? So Ratpack focuses on performance and efficiency. So we utilize the system resources much more effectively than a servlet container could. So we don't do a thread per request. It's all non-blocking. It's asynchronous. But unlike other asynchronous web frameworks that are out there, Ratpack actually focuses on trying to make asynchronicity an easy and consumable thing, right? As easy and as consumable as possible. But also, so a big problem with asynchronous programming, I think that you know this, Peter, is that asynchronicity introduces a lot of non-determinism because there's a temporal disconnect between invoking an asynchronous call and receiving the data back as part of the callback mechanism, right? So
Yeah.
what Ratpack does is it takes all of the asynchronous parts and it builds them into something that can be thought of in the same terms as a continuation. And it takes all of the parts of the asynchronicity and it breaks them out into their own delimited frames. And what it does is it serializes those segments so that you get guaranteed and deterministic execution order. So with Ratpack, building asynchronous APIs and working with asynchronous APIs doesn't introduce that level of non-determinism that you get with other systems. So it's very compelling in that respect. But also, so what does all that mean? At the end of the day, what that means is that you get a bigger bang for your buck out of a single application. So I ran tests against 0.913, which was one of our biggest changes to the framework. I ran tests in the cloud. I ran on a C4 8X large, which has 36 cores on it, 36 CPU cores, and I just wanted to push it. I wanted to see how much we could get out of it. And on a single instance of Ratpack running in that environment, the performance tests are on my slide deck from my recent presentation at 2GX. But from a single instance, we were able to get as high as 989,000 requests per second. Now that's just measuring framework overhead, right? So it's not a production level application, but at the same time, that's pretty freaking awesome. A single instance being able to satisfy almost 1 million requests per second, that's amazing. That's huge. So when you're not running just performance tests like that, when you're running a real production application, you want to get the most bang for your buck out of your cloud platform, right? So with Ratpack, what you're going to be able to do is use smaller instances and use fewer of them to achieve the same kind of scale that you would expect to get out of many more. So in that respect, if you like money, like I do, build Ratpack.
And there is integration with Spring now, is there?
You got it. Yep. So we
Okay,
have full integration with Spring Boot. So you can have that entire ecosystem at your disposal, which is amazing.
But as I think, like Tim Fox mentioned, most of the Spring APIs are currently blocking, aren't they? They're like thread pool based and all that stuff. So
yeah, exactly. So in asynchronous frameworks, so you brought up Tim Fox. Let's talk about VertX. So in asynchronous frameworks like VertX, blocking APIs, that's a huge problem because you can't block on the request taking thread, right? Otherwise your throughput suffers. In Ratpack, you don't have that problem because what Ratpack provides is the ability to make any API asynchronous. And we can do that because Ratpack promises through its execution model are able to be intelligently scheduled either to a blocking thread pool or to the computation thread pool. So you can very safely use the Spring Cloud OSS integration, really any of the Spring Boot stuff within your Ratpack apps. It's first class supported.
okay, cool. And this is particularly important for like the database access and the like, because you're probably not going to see non-blocking drivers for a while. Are there non-blocking drivers in the Java space? I don't know.
There are a few, but you're right, it's very limited. And if you want to use anything that's JDBC based in an asynchronous web framework like VertX, you're gonna run into trouble, right?
Okay.
So Ratpack, with its ability to schedule to a blocking thread pool, makes it so that you can use those APIs.
So it sounds particularly good in just like making non-blocking and asynchronous systems manageable or more manageable. But it's not. So it's not designed to be reactive, but it feels like reactive and reactive streams are a good match to the Ratpack model. Would that be correct? Or
yeah, actually it is designed to be reactive.
It is designed to be reactive. So I mean, that's effectively an architectural style. So if you're going to commit to Ratpack, you're effectively committing to a reactive style of architecture.
Yeah, you kind of have to in an asynchronous world, but what we're trying to do with the APIs is make it so that you kind of don't have to think about that kind of stuff. You have the capability there for when you need it, right? But in general, we want to make that as easy as possible for people. In that same train of thought, though, it's probably worth noting that we have first class integration with RxJava. So in other words, you can use observables inside of your application, and those the stream that you build with your observable flow can be safe is able to be safely mapped into Ratpack's execution model. We also have some implementations of reactive streams that you can use for whatever you want to do. So it's really cool.
Okay, I'm guessing it's not really geared towards the traditional web app style. I guess is it more focused on either the modern where rich UI where you've got most of the work being done in the browser in terms of UI, and you're just sending the asynchronous, the AJAX calls back and forth and doing JSON, plus microservices. Those are the two main.
That's those are definitely the good use cases that we've seen so far, but it's not to say that we don't support regular templating and serving of static assets. And in fact, with the asset pipeline stuff now being moved out into a Gradle plugin, we get all the benefits of that as well in our in our ecosystem. So you can safely integrate the asset pipeline within a Ratpack application, and it'll all just work.
Okay, cool. So it definitely feels like the book is essential for Ratpack for it to gain traction, and I think it's essential for sort of more content generation around Ratpack. It's mostly, from my perspective, it's mostly been an engineering effort, which means that it's very good, solid technology, and it just needs to be made more approachable. I feel that's my personal perspective on it. I don't know how you feel.
Yeah, I think you're right.
You counter that.
Yeah,
Okay.
and honestly, the more people that we get to try it, the more people we get to use it, the better it becomes. So I would say to anybody listening or is out there, if you're gonna build a Groovy or a Java based application, just give it a spin, see how it fits for you.
Yeah, I know that Mac, W MacGyver on Twitter, he sounded very interested in it. Well, he sounded as if it was very good technology for his sort of requirements. I don't know whether he'll eventually use it or not, but that scalability, he had tested that scalability. Being able to handle that number of requests, and I think he probably came up with similar results to you. So, it's interesting on that side of things. One other thing I wanted to talk about. So I saw the slides from one of the keynotes. It sounded like there were several keynotes and a lot of live demos. Graham had something about Grails and Async / Netty as one of the profiles. Now, I already mentioned that, like with something like Ratpack, if you go reactive, that's effectively an architectural style choice and affects everything you do, and it's a bit hard to mix it with the old stuff that you would be doing. Do you think it's viable for, do you think it's viable for Grails to sit on top of an async platform like Netty? Or I don't know whether there's thoughts of trying to incorporate Grails systems into Ratpack. So I don't know what the plans are at all, but I was interested by seeing that slide, and I'm dubious myself. So, I'm open to arguments to say that actually it will work.
Yeah, sure. Great question. So the plan is definitely to put Grails in some form on top of Ratpack. So Ratpack will just be another one of the application profiles that you can choose, and that'll be their asynchronous, non-blocking, Netty, etc. layer. So the plan is definitely to use Ratpack to do that kind of stuff. Grails, the Grails 3 is such a big change that I think is very transparent to a lot of people in its actual function. But what they've done with Grails 3 and the internal architecture of Grails is they've decoupled it from the servlet API. So integrating the servlet API into Grails is just an implementation detail. So that opens the door to be able to say, we're going to put this same kind of MVC and convention over configuration technology onto something that is not servlet based, right? So that's kind of what the future is there. And talking with Graham about that, his response to me was, I'm waiting on the pull request from you. So so we'll see if we ever get to
Nice
it.
one, nice one. Okay, I mean, so my doubt really comes from the fact that you have the MVC thread-based system compared to a reactive system. Like a lot of stuff in the Grails ecosystem makes assumptions about servlet containers. It also makes assumptions about Spring. But I did hear on the grapevine that Spring APIs are going to become more reactive friendly or reactive in themselves. I don't know whether they're planning to have side-by-side APIs, but I'm just not sure about whether you can really have like a single API across two such different platforms, technologies as
That's right. Yeah.
based and reactive.
Yeah. So in Grails 2, the Grails team introduced the concept of a promise, and that that kind of opens the door. Using promises and using reactive technology like RxJava, for example, kind of opens the door for you to be like, the implementation behind this is going to be blocking, but the interface into this is going to be through either observables or promises or whatever, and that is the mechanism that allows you to kind of change that out behind the scenes, right? So using Grails promises, for example, it can still be a synchronous and blocking process today. But then when we want to get into the async side of things, we can kind of trade that out for an asynchronous or non-blocking approach to things. Now, with respect to Spring Framework 5 going toward a reactive asynchronous approach to doing things, they have an opportunity to do something good, really good here, and I hope that they don't. I hope that they don't take for granted the fact that they have people like Stefan who are working there today, and has done a ton of work with Project Reactor, and really deeply understands asynchronous processing and stuff like that. They've a real good chance to do this right and to bring it to the mainstream. I hope they do it right.
Okay, cool. So that's what's coming with Spring 5. That's their plan.
Yeah, Spring 5. And
okay.
And Spring 5 will be Q4 next year.
Okay. Are you committing to that for them?
No, that's Jurgen's words, not mine.
Okay, let's not bring up past performance on hitting scheduled dates for spring. Okay, that's fascinating. I say that's another big piece of news from Spring 1.2 GX from my perspective. So I'd kind of heard from other channels. I didn't realize that it had effectively been announced with Spring 5. So that's really interesting stuff. So yeah, I hope they do a good job there. I'm interested just to see how they plan to do it, whether they keep side-by-side APIs. What kind of impact do you feel this is going to have on the Grails plugin ecosystem? Do you think there are people going to have to develop reactive-friendly plugins, or are many of them just going to fit in without any problems? I'm also... Whoa, okay, that was some traffic. Don't worry. So that's one part of the question, and I suddenly thought of, I think there's now a sort of formal event model within Grails, but I haven't read much about it. It's not really been pushed to consumers, users.
Yeah. Great questions. I think I'll start with the first one about reactive plugins, etc. The answer in short, I think, is yes. The people will need to start developing their plugins in a way that will be asynchronous, non-blocking. Will make use of fixtures like reactive streams or RxJava to be able to go off and do all of this kind of stuff. On the other hand, I think that Grails is in a really great position because they're already doing. And this is not a criticism, but because there's so much magic that already goes on in Grails to make this stuff much easier to use and to work with, I think that they have a great opportunity here to leverage the fact that they're building on Groovy and that they have metaprogramming capabilities to understand when something is blocking and when it's non-blocking, and to split things up in a way so that when you're using blocking APIs, those APIs will be scheduled to the right thread pool. When you're using computation APIs, they can stay on the request taking thread pool, which would build. This would bring a whole nother level of performance to Grails, and to do it in a way that would be intelligent like that would make it something that would be very, very consumable. So for the people who care about the fact that they're working with an observable, or they're working with a promise type, then they have the ability to explicitly do that. And for the people who just want to write applications and don't really care about any of that kind of stuff, Grails will make sure that everything is working behind the scenes for them. I'd love to see that kind of change in the infrastructure. That would be huge.
Yeah, I think positioning Grails as something that makes the cutting edge technologies a lot more approachable for normal developers. I rapidly feel I'm falling into the category of normal developer. I can't keep up with all this stuff. I just want my app to work. God damn it!
Exactly.
And you know what? I think there are a lot of developers out there like that who really actually just want to get things done. And all the cutting edge stuff is interesting, but it's really time consuming. So anything that can make that more approachable, I think will have a very welcome audience.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
So do you know anything about the Grails internal event model, whether it's a formal thing, that it's effectively an API that plugins can hook into, or whether it's an internal thing?
I don't. The only thing I know is probably what you remember, which is it was very stringly typed before, and there were plans to move it to something that was more formalized, right?
Yeah, so that's why I was expecting a little bit more information about that in like the Grails 3 release notes documentation and that, something, because I would love to see really strong plugin APIs. So plugin authors have for doing a lot of stuff that they do, there is a known way to do it. From the 1.x and 2.x days, a lot of stuff was hacked around. The APIs weren't that fixed or documented. So there was a lot of stuff that made plugin authors' lives a little bit hairy, if you like. It's
yeah.
So I'm hoping that we see a well-documented, strong API for plugins. It may already be there, and it just needs to be documented more clearly, or I just need to read the documentation properly, which could also be the case.
Well, I think if you figure it out, it's good material for a long-form blog post, probably.
Oh, don't you try and get me to do blog posts. I guess the first person who mentions a blog post is the one who has to write it. How about that?
Oh no! Oh no! What have I done? So I have enough writing to do.
Yeah, it's something I may do, but I have a exploring Ratpack blog post that I feel I want to do at some point. I need to get around to doing that.
Very cool.
I need to do. I said to people that I would do something on box views as well, which I like as a deployment technology. So I think it's a good time to wrap up. We've been going good 3/4 of an hour. So thank you very much, Dan. Do you have any shout outs that you'd like to voice?
Not in particular. The one thing I would like to say is for anybody viewing this, if you're interested in Ratpack, we are a very welcoming and helpful community. If you go to ratpack.io, at the bottom of the page there's a link to join our community Slack. And through the community Slack, you can just interface with everybody who's in the ecosystem and who's doing stuff. Chat with us, ask questions, get help, whatever you need. So our Slack channel is now, I believe today I looked, we were just over 100. So the more the merrier. Please come on in.
Cool. Is that registered users or concurrent users?
Registered, I guess, would be the answer to that. So you
Okay.
know you sign up once and then
Yeah.
you can come and go as you please.
Cool. I shall try to remember to add a link to that in the show notes as well. And you mentioned the Grails one. The Grails one has a fair few people registered for it, and Slack's kind of exploded. It's like everyone's using Slack these days.
Exactly.
Cool. So once again, thanks very much for taking time out from your car trip, Dan. And it was great talking. I learned a lot. I hope our listeners learned a lot about cloud, async, non-blocking, and specifically Ratpack. And I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen in Spring, Ratpack, and Grails around the whole non-blocking stuff. So thank you very much. And we will catch you next time. So it's goodbye from me and goodbye from... That's your cue.
Oh, goodbye from Dan.
Goodbye.
Thanks a lot, Peter. Bye.